Hey, what's up, CAUSENETIC family?
Welcome to the CAUSENETIC podcast.
CAUSENETIC means being a person, a thing that gives rise to a phenomenon that's dynamic or energizing.
We're tackling topics and telling the truth.
Hey, I'm Keith Benson.
And I'm Rodrigo Ross.
Hey, so today we're talking about busting out.
Pow! Is that how busting out sounds?
Hey, there you go.
Poof.
It's how to break down barriers and not accept limits.
Poof. That's how not accepting limits sounds.
So what does barrier mean? Let's start off with some definitions.
Yeah, okay. So what does a barrier mean? I think it's subjective, right? I know that the word barrier, right? It means, if you just look it up in a dictionary, it's an obstacle or an obstruction in a process, right? It's something in a thing that's keeping you from going from one thing to another thing. But an actual barrier itself is really subjective. It just really depends on the person, because something I could see as a barrier, you may not necessarily
So barriers
see.
are not equal to everybody.
Right.
Yeah. Where you see one thing, where I see one thing, that's a whole different scenario.
Absolutely.
And so then when we talk about limit, that's a boundary or point. If we're going by the definition to the letter of the law.
Mm-hmm. That's what we're doing. The letter of the law.
The letter of the law. Put it down. A boundary or a point where something ends or the maximum amount allowed.
Well, come on, Pastor Vincent. The maximum amount was allowed.
And so your max and my max,
it could be two different maxes.
Right.
I've seen that with shoes. My max and your max aren't the same maxes.
You're correct. Because my max is probably just about the cost of the heel of your max.
That is so inaccurate.
I'm not there in life yet.
I think you are. It's accepted.
But when I think about, a lot of times people put things in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
They tell you not going to be about much.
Mm-hmm.
They tell you can only do but so much. But we got to be able to take those messages that come from people and you can't put that limit on me.
Yeah. And sometimes inadvertently we do it to children, and that manifests itself all the way into adulthood. So I can clearly remember as a child, I had a teacher one time, and we used to have spelling tests every Friday, right? And so you get these 20 words on Monday, and throughout the course of the week, you did all these activities with the words so that you could memorize the words. And then on Friday, you had your spelling test. Well, I was a very laid back child. And so, it would be many times after school. I might, if I had to be completely honest, maybe I didn't pay as much attention to them spelling words as I should have during the week.
I can tell.
And you cannot tell. And on Friday, maybe I didn't get the best spelling test score I could possibly maybe have gotten. So after a couple of consecutive weeks of me really getting these fairly mediocre spelling test scores, I had a teacher that basically told me, you know what, you're just not going to be anything in life because you can't spell. You're just not going to be, if you don't get it together and learn how to spell. And I don't know, I maybe in her mind, she thought she was motivating me, or maybe she thought she was giving me a little bit of insight into what things were going to be needed. But if I would have really internalized that, right, and used that as a limit or a barrier, what if I would have lived down to that hypothesis? Now, I am a lover of words, and by my own standards, I love a good $14 word.
I get to you. You got a couple $15 words that you use. I gotta, there's sometimes, though, I'm gonna be honest, transparency, right? There's sometimes you use the words, and I have to go back and look them up. I'd be like,
as you should, right? I am a lover of language. I love words. So thank goodness I had enough other people in my space or in my life to kind of talk me around that, right? And kind of turn that around and say, no, prove that wrong or whatever. Well, what if, just from a child's perspective, you don't? And inadvertently we put limits, right? Like my son told me when he was, 3 or 4 years old. I said, well, sweet potato, what you want to be when you grow up? He told me a race car. I said, well, manual or a stick shift? I could have told him, baby, you're not going to be a car. But I didn't want to limit him. Now, eventually, he came to realize he's probably not going to be a car when he grows up, I don't want to put the limits on the baby. I don't want to put barriers.
But your baby boy is about the size of a little car.
He's a big car. If he was a car, he'd be a truck.
You gotta be.
For sure.
You know what? Tell me this. All right, so a lot of people put some limits on women, and so the part of it about being pregnant.
Ooh, yeah.
Like, so I had a limiting thought of pregnancy, like in my younger days. Like, I didn't know that you could like exercise to a point until one day out at the Y, and I'm looking at this lady. Her name is Dawn. She's a group exercise fitness instructor. She's 9 months pregnant and doing high. I'm talking about high impact. I was like,
I didn't think. Well, I wasn't like Dawn when I was pregnant. Kudos to Dawn, but I took advantage of the one time where it's really socially acceptable to be fluffy. And I leaned into that thing when I was pregnant, and I sat and ate. With my daughter, I think I ate pizza and chocolate milk every day. So, but absolutely, that is a limit that people put on women, and just thinking because they are pregnant, they can't exercise, they can't participate in certain activities. And sometimes, unfortunately, women put it on themselves, right? Like we take ourselves out of. Because nobody told me I couldn't exercise. I just chose not to.
And so Candace Parker, a WNBA superstar, she was pregnant and won MVP.
Oh, see, she doing extra now. She making me feel real bad about my pizza and chocolate milk choices. Like, come on, Candace. You didn't have to do us like that.
She was like, all right, you say I'm pregnant, we can't do anything. Okay.
Watch this.
Here you go, MVP.
Watch this.
And then, they told Candace also, man, girls can't dunk.
Well,
Candace went and turned that thing out in WNBA and dunked twice.
See? It's amazing to me how certain people can take those limiting beliefs, right, and those barriers and those limits that people try to place on them, and they can use that as fuel.
Right.
And then some people really do internalize that, right? And then there's an inferiority that begins to breed.
Yeah, and still building on Candace, so pregnant, won MVP championship, and then people think like, okay, well, she's an athlete, and she has kids. Like, well, how's she supposed to do all that?
Because God forbid, right? You be a mom and an athlete and an entrepreneur. Right?
So why she can't have a career? Okay?
Right.
And then during that time also, she even nursed her daughter.
Oh, I'm really feeling bad about myself. Oh, goodness.
Hey, but
talk about busting limits.
Everybody's
different.
Yeah, everybody's barriers and limits are not the same.
My daughter and I had matching shoes, though. They used to light up. You didn't put limits on baby girl some light up shoes that we could have matching.
Yes.
Right.
Bless.
We overcame that barrier. Together.
Yeah. But we got to be able to take a look at our lives, take a look at our situations, and understand that there's no one person that can come in and dominate the space that's in between our two ears to be able to set some type of limitations.
I like that.
Now, we're all going to have barriers that come in our life, but now we got to figure out, just because that barrier is there, that doesn't mean that that's the end point right there.
Right.
It's like, how do you get over that? How do you get around that barrier right there?
Yeah.
But we got to be able to put those things in place. And so
is it really a barrier?
Right.
Like, is it a barrier? Sometimes we will manifest barriers. So that, we've talked about it in a number of different podcasts and across different subject matter about getting this whole group of people, like your personal board of directors or your truth tellers around you. This is another instance where that is really critical, because those individuals can really help you discern or knock down or get around or possibly even move a barrier for you, right? Like, they could really help you really assess, is that really a barrier, or is that something that you're kind of making up, or is that a perception thing? Not that, you're just making up stuff, but I can absolutely think about times in my life and in my career where I thought something was a barrier, and it was just because of maybe I didn't have all of the pieces of the puzzle, all of the parts of the story, just a little bit of information. I was too scared to probably ask for some clarifying or some more information, and so I created a barrier that wasn't really there.
Right.
And if the truth tellers didn't, kind of tell me, girl, get your life. That's not a barrier. That's not a limit.
Right.
Or there have been times when there absolutely were barriers, and they helped me kind of navigate those. Or in some instances, some people will go and knock them out the way, right? Like they will push that out the way so that you can move forward. So this is a classic reason why I think you should absolutely form that personal board of directors or your truth tellers.
And I think when I think about some conversations we've had recently around just staff in terms of they may be new to their position. And while they're new to their position, they have all these limitations there. I can't do this because I'm new. Well, I can't do this because I haven't been trained, or I can't. And it's like, well, why can't you? Like, how do you figure that out? I mean, because it's not on the supervisor to be able to help develop your career. I mean, they there to help coach and help guide. But at the end of the day, you got to put effort to that in order to be able to get around that barrier right there. So if you're a program director and your barrier is that I have a small budget and I want to do more, well, you really got control of that because you can go out and raise your money
and grow the budget.
Speaking about nonprofit space, that we're both in, but people want to again put that limitation on themselves that, well, I can't raise money. Well, no, you can go.
You can absolutely raise money.
Absolutely go out there and make those things happen.
Like, who told you couldn't? Right. I all of that stuff comes down to there's a phenomenon called an attitudinal barrier. But see, that's one of them $14 words.
Attitudinal.
Attitudinal.
I know some folks who got some attitudinals.
I don't think that's the same thing.
Boy, let me hear your definition first, and I'm sorry.
Attitudinal barriers are often based in bias, and not necessarily external bias, but internal biases, whether you realize you have them or not. And they stem from things like your upbringing, your social influences, your understanding of different groups, and your understanding of equity. And your attitude towards something can create a barrier sometimes that may be larger than it actually is. And so if you go back to this staff thing, and we really have to think through some of the barriers, are there some of the barriers that we are experiencing or have experienced that can be attributed to, or that can be classified as an attitudinal barrier? It was something about my bias, my lived experience, my influences, my understanding or lack thereof that created a barrier that may not necessarily have been there. I see that often with young, like you were saying, with young staff who say, I have a small budget, or I have a this, that, and the other thing. Many times their barriers, well, I can't do this, or I can't move from this role to this role. Who said? Well, I never saw it, or one person who was in this role had a bad experience, and whatever the case may be, you just may not necessarily have an accurate accounting to really get a clear picture, and that's when that attitudinal barrier jumps up.
But you got to be willing to get over the barriers. If the willingness not there, then you just can't do it.
You got to just roll through it. You got to just push through that thing, roll through that thing, and just you can be a little bit roguish about it, huh?
I mean, sometimes, but you got to have that roguish mindset.
You do have to be roguish with it.
That's what it's saying. And roguish doesn't mean, in this case, what we're talking about. You don't have to have a bad attitude, or bully somebody or push somebody out of the way. It is that I am going to make this happen.
That intestinal fortitude.
There you go.
There's some more words for you. That I'm gonna tell you fortitude.
I'm gonna be broke. I have to pay for all these words that you putting down
here. Yeah, you gotta have fortitude.
But if you don't have that type of attitude to be able to get over those barriers, I mean, you're gonna stay stuck. And so this is not just the young program director. This is the 30, 40, 50 something, and it's like, it's always somebody else's fault. It's like, how do you get around
victim mentality?
Yeah, how do you get around that? And so your budget is small, or I don't have any staff. Okay, well, how do you get around that?
Yeah.
What is your solution to the problem that you're talking about?
I had a supervisor one time that he would always tell me, all right, now look ahead, don't come to me with all these woe is me's. I was like, what is a woe is me's? But I get it now, all of the barriers, right? All of the things that are not going right, all of the things that are keeping you from being successful. He was like, identify it and then figure out how to get around it, right?
You got to, because if you don't, it's just this place of that you're just going to be going in a circle. I mean, it's kind of like a dog chasing the tail. If you got that image, just keep going in circles and circles and circles. Right.
That was my dog impression.
Okay.
I tried.
That I ain't even.
I tried it. It's a cute dog too, like a poodle or something. I don't know. But chasing the tail, you're chasing.
Yes, and that's what your life looks like. I mean, it just goes in a cycle. On and on and on. And it's that you got that limit right there.
And I can imagine that's a very frustrating cycle to be in, right? Like where you just constantly feel like you're always up against things that are insurmountable. Like that has to be, and truth be told, it's a little foreign to me because even as a kid, which is probably the reason why I stayed in a considerable amount of trouble, is as soon as somebody told me I couldn't do something, you know how little kids, watch this, right? And it is absolutely bled into my adult life.
Mentality, right? Is that I'm gonna get over. But we allow different things, reasons for barriers to put in, become in our place, right?
Yeah.
And so it is like fear. Like it's the fear of the unknown that's out there, because I never traveled this road before, so I don't know where I'm going, and so I don't know if I need to go that direction. Yeah. But it's a road. All roads lead to somewhere.
But what if it don't lead to where you trying to go?
Well, I tell you what, you get your GPS out.
you get your maps out,
and you get
Waze.
And you figure it out.
And you go a different route. It makes sense.
I mean, but makes sense. Okay, there's a road. So back in the day, there's a road like, all right, we got to figure this out. Today, there's a GPS. You just pick up your phone and say, I want to go here. And I think that is a guidance in life also, that like you can decide where you want to go.
Or decide this ain't the route for you.
Right. Yeah. Like, and then your GPS going to give you multiple routes. Which way you want to go?
You want to pay some tolls.
You want to go to highway. So there's a fast track to get to somewhere, and then there's a little bit longer way.
Come on,
and then when you go to fast track, you may have to pay a toll.
Yeah.
But that's the process that you have to go through in order to get there a little bit faster.
Get there fast.
Now, if you just want to take your time, 20 years, then you can go down the road. I'm going to tell you, one time I was going, we're in Dallas, for those who are listening. I was going up to Tulsa to see my buddy. Well, he told me one of I think 4 or 5 hours. Well, I'm thinking Dallas to Tulsa, main roads, highway, what have you.
Yeah.
Well, I put it in my GPS, and I'm going. And I'm just like, why am I going through all these small towns? Well, come to get to my final destination, I look back at my GPS. It said no tolls.
Oh.
See, you get that life lesson right there?
Come on. Let me get the collection plate money out.
See, if you want to get there a little faster, you're going to have to pay some tolls to get over that barrier right there.
It's a little price for that. Yeah.
And when you're going through life, if fear is there, you know what? Hey, take the toll roll.
Take the toll.
Take the toll roll.
Take the streets. Go through the little towns if you're a little scared of the price.
Okay. There's a price that you have to pay for success.
There's gonna have to be a price. But now, I don't want people to think that we are minimizing the fact that there are absolutely real barriers. Like every barrier that you will come against, whether it's a physical, a social, attitudinal, or organizational, or technological, cultural barriers, communication barriers, barriers around equity, language barriers. Some of those things are very real, right? They are absolutely a barrier. It's not something that you're making up in your mind. It's not something that has to do with your personal ability to be resilient, and to push through and be quote unquote roguish. They are real barriers. However, even in that though, I still think that some of these basic premises still apply. That there has to be something in you that says, I'm still going to make my way around this. For instance, Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris. She has never in her entire lifetime, no one who is living in their entire lifetime has ever seen a woman vice president, and surely not one who is biracial, right? And that is a real barrier. That is true. It is a fact. Now, what if she would have just said, well, I've never seen it, and there are clearly people out here who can't imagine a person with these demographic characteristics in the role, inhabiting that space, and so I'm gonna just leave this thing alone. And because so what if she would have thought that? We wouldn't have been sitting here at this historical glass break moment where we have the first vice president who is biracial and a woman and that kind of stuff. So while some barriers are perceived and some of them come from, our ability to assess and process based on our lived experience, and we may make them greater than they really are, there are some that are absolutely real. But I think the premises are the same. This idea, this fortitude and gathering people around you and using your choice, right? You have a choice, whether you want to brush up against something or you want to just kind of be like, okay, well, this is a good stopping point for me.
Right. And those who have those true barriers there, I would just encourage you to find that right person to be able to talk with, to kind of help that. And so some of that looks like maybe an executive coach. If we're talking about the workspace.
I'm hearing a lot about this whole executive coach thing. I've never had an executive coach, but I'm very fascinated. So exactly what does an executive coach do?
Executive coach helps you to be able to foresee the things that should be happening in your space based on the issue that you want to have accomplished. So it's not a matter of somebody telling you this is what you need to do. It's that they're helping you to figure this thing out, whatever that
build those critical thinking skills.
And it's you at the end of the day that's developing the solution, not the executive coach. But you got to be able to go into that space there, be transparent with your issues that you are experiencing, and be honest with what you really want to accomplish. And then there's the homework that you have to do. If you don't do the homework, then you stay stuck in the same situation.
Wow, that is not what I thought an executive coach was. I thought an executive coach really worked with you to kind of up your influence or your executive presence or your ability to kind of lead other people. I didn't know that it was much more of a personal and inward journey and really helping you build that skill set so you can be a visionary and the brain trust.
But there again, excellent. Though, is that there's a cost to an executive coach.
Yeah, I imagine so.
That's one of those tolls.
That's the toll right there. You took the toll road if you got an executive.
Yeah, that's that one that.
I took the streets then.
When you don't have the toll tag, you got to pay a little extra. You're gonna pay. But I'm telling you that if you get a good one, it's well worth the money because
it's game changing. It sounds like it's game changing. Yeah,
it puts you in a whole different place. And I just want to encourage people to, when you get to that barrier, right? Don't let that be the limit.
Yeah.
Like there's a way around that particular barrier for whatever that may be. And then you got to find ways to compensate for some things. Yeah. Now, I know that there's some things that I don't do well.
You want me to tell you? Oh, I'm sorry. That wasn't this part of the. Go, please.
I ain't telling. I don't need you to have no more ammunition on me. That's the last thing. I'm just saying, you got to know what those limitations.
Yeah,
those
self-awareness is
what that is, and how do you work around that? Because when I think about you use the example of Kamala Harris, and I think about Candace Parker, and Candace Parker is just a rock star.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, she is a rock star. When you're talking about being pregnant, winning MVP, talking about 9 weeks later after having your baby, you're back on the basketball court and nursing your daughter. You're talking about video game. You're on the cover of a video game. Like that may sound to the males out there, that may just sound like norm, but that's not the norm for females.
For women, right?
And so, and she's doing all these different things here, breaking all kind of barriers that people said, in my lifetime, I wouldn't think that these things are happening, but she's out there doing it. And so I just want to encourage people who listen to this podcast right here is that, hey, when you get to your barrier, don't make that your limit.
It is amazing to me, this whole idea of barriers, how barriers can show up to sometimes, particularly in the real space, when a barrier is really real and it really is as large as we think that it is. It can look like there's no way. Like, I can't see the light at the end of this tunnel. I can't see around this thing, over this thing, under this thing. And so just know too that sometimes when you're breaking barriers, it's a long game. It's not something that happens quickly. Hopefully you'll look in your rearview mirror after you've gone past that barrier and you're like, okay, I saw how all of these different things were kind of building upon one another to help me finally get to this place. But I think that's another thing that's really discouraging for folks too, when they're trying to build up their fortitude or their roguishness or their resilience to get through a barrier, is that there are some barriers that take a long time to get over. In the racial equity space, when we're talking about racial equity work and anti-racism, I know that there are people whose appetite, particularly if your lived experience causes you to brush up against some of these traumas regularly, you want this thing fixed and you want it fixed right now.
Right.
But it is a 400-year-old problem that is very complex. And it's gonna take a while. And sometimes we just have to realize that the bigger the barrier, the longer it takes to overcome sometimes.
And you got to be the one that gets over that barrier. I mean, you can't let other people hold you back. Yeah. And so, CAUSENETIC families, you guys are listening out there. Hey, go get around that barrier.
Get around the barrier. Give somebody a leg up. So even if you're not the person that scales the wall of the barrier, the person that scaled it was because, you know how little kids, when they put your fingers together and they step in and you give that person. It's everybody's win once that barrier is crossed, and then hey, we figured out the path for everybody. Now, I know exactly which way to go to get over that thing now. So all right, somebody give me a boost. Kid, you wanna put your hands together and let me get up? Okay.
No, I would jump over and scale the wall for you.
Oh, right. And leave me back there. I'll be on the other side. King?
I'm coming.
You already gone. Never mind. I'm gonna give me a step stool or a ladder. I don't trust you gonna give me a hand up over that barrier.
We're gonna get over that barrier.
Well, thank you, family. We would love to hear from you guys about ways that you get over barriers. And thank you for listening to CAUSENETIC.
On this episode called Bustin Out.
How? Subscribe and listen to us weekly.
And don't be shy. Give us a 5-star review.
And as always,
be dynamic,
be phenomenal,
and be
CAUSENETIC.